First thing you're going to do is drain the coolant out of the radiator. So you find the drain plug with a catch pan underneath it, open it up. First thing we're going to do is disconnect the negative battery cable, then we can get to work. Remove the air box cover to the throttle body first. Just use an adjustable pair of pliers. Undo the clips over by the air filter. Oh, they're just metal clips. Pop them out. And you have your air breather tube. Take that off and set it aside. We're going to remove the throttle cable, and that's just a little screwdriver. You're going to move that tab out and lift it up, and then you can just simply pop it off the little knob. And we can set that aside. I'm going to disconnect this bracket over the thermostat housing, and it's a 14mm socket on both sides. Well, let's go this side first. So this is a double nut. You might need to put a wrench underneath there. So a wrench holding the double stud and a 14mm socket. Take that nut off the top. 1/4-inch socket. I'm going to remove this bracket that holds the AC. AC lines, we want to get this bracket like this out of the way. And now we can move this stud out and take the bracket out. 14mm socket. We can remove the stud. So I'm going to take the hose off and really look at this thermostat housing to see if there's an easier way than what they say to do. Squeeze the clamp. See if I can bring that up. Now this is what they call a hose tool. So this hose, you know, they get stuck really big on the connectors. So this goes up inside, doesn't damage the hose, and I can rotate it around and disconnect it. It's just sticking on one little spot. There we go. Set that aside. And there's the thermostat housing with the 2 bolts. They say to take the AC unit out, the alternator out, and then the whole housing bracket houses them. I'm going to see if I can take that out and clean it up without doing all that. 13mm socket or 1/2 inch, and let's break these housing bolts free. Might need a magnet once you get these bolts free to get them out underneath there. It's kind of a long tunnel down there. There's one. And there's the second one. Now you can just grab that housing and pull it right up. The thermostat housing with the actual thermostat stuck in it. See this tab right here? Underneath all this rust, it actually says front. So that means when you put it back down into the engine, you know that this is the front of the engine. So you just take the thermostat off, clean this up as best as you can, make sure there's no debris left behind. If you have to use a wire wheel or a wire brush, once you scrape the gasket off, strongly recommend. So now you can see the thermostat spot on top of the intake. It is kind of hard to get in here and clean. That's probably why they want you to take the AC off and the alternator and the whole bracket. But I'm going to do my best to make sure that I don't have to take all that off, because I just turned an 1.5-hour job into literally a 15-minute job. So you have to get in there with sandpaper, do the best you can, but you make sure this is as clean as you can get it. The way to tell if you have the correct thermostat is you can also ask the specifications or find out the specifications for each vehicle. But the one I took out was 195 and it ran great, never had any problems with it underheating or overheating. You know, like you didn't get cold air during the wintertime, you actually, thermostat opened and you got a nice hot air flow in. If you can see that right there, it says 195. So that's where the temperature is located on the thermostats when you buy them. It tells you what degrees they open up at. So I cleaned up the housing on the intake as best as I can. Being an aluminum housing, you can see all that pitting from, it's an O2, so it has some age to it. Instead of a paper gasket, I'm going to go with some RTV that is coolant safe, and I'm going to put enough on there to fill in the holes and not use a paper. Don't ever use RTV and paper at the same time. It will actually break the paper down within so much time, so within a year it could leak. Just going to use RTV and then seal it up. So now you put the thermostat in first. So see the groove on the intake? That's where this is going to sit. It's going to sit in that groove. So that's why it's also important to make sure that it's very clean, so it sits nice and tight right in there. It doesn't overlap. You don't want it to be like this to one side, because the housing won't make a good contact with the intake. So we want it locked right into that circle, and we're ready to put the housing on. I'm going to put my RTV on the housing itself, just like a nice 1/8 bead all the way around. All RTV comes in different colors, and that also has to do with the temperature, curing of it, and the strength. Okay, make sure you've got the tag that says front, towards the front. Guide it without trying to hit anything. I don't want to scrape any of that RTV off. Line up my bolt holes. Let it sit right in there. Perfect. I'm just going to take a pair of long needle nose pliers to make sure I can drop that bolt right in the spot. Both sides. Take my socket. I'm just going to hand start both these bolts. So now we're going to torque our housing bolts down. Once I snug them down with my hand, because the torque spec is only 17 foot-pounds, which is like 200 inch-pounds or 23 Newton-meters. Make sure you go, once I really get snug, I'm going to go back and forth because I don't want this to sit crooked or have any warpness to it.